All right, so we talked mostly about the central nervous system last time. I'm actually going to a different PowerPoint for the sake of time today. This one is, I've already put it in Canvas for you, but it covers the same information, just in a few less slides. So outside of your central nervous system is your peripheral nervous system. It's made up of your ganglia as well as your nerves. We divide it up into afferent and efferent divisions. So the afferent division is also known as the sensory division. Okay, so it's sensing information and sending it to your brain and spinal cord. Okay. So it serves the skin, serves joints, serves tendons, skeletal muscles, as well as your special senses like vision, hearing, and hearing and smell. So your visceral sensory division will supply your internal organs. Okay. Now your efferent or motor division, call that somatic motor, and it will carry commands from your central nervous system down to your skeletal muscles. So your autonomic nervous system or motor system will regulate your cardiac muscle, your smooth muscle, and your glands. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Let's see. All right. Thank you. All right. Let's see if we can make this a little bit larger. All right. So like I said before, you have your afferent and efferent divisions. Afferent sensory serves your skin, skeletal muscles, joints, and tendons, as well as your special senses. The efferent or motor division is going to send signals from your central nervous system down to the skeletal muscles. Your autonomic nervous system, autonomic is kind of like automatic, so you're not thinking to do it. Regulates your cardiac and smooth muscle tissue as well as your glands. Okay, so that is a basic overview of your peripheral nervous system. Now, in your peripheral nervous system, you have cranial nerves. Okay, and this means there are nerves in your cranium, or they go to your cranium. You have 12 pairs of these. And your sensory nerves contain only sensory fibers. Your motor nerves only have motor fibers in them. Now you have some mixed nerves that have combination of sensory and motor fibers. Most of these are involved with parts of your head, your neck, and your face. So for example, your cranial nerve, the vagus nerve, which is cranial nerve 10, it has sensory and motor branches that go to your face and your internal organs. Okay, so this is a mixed nerve. All right, so this picture shows you the cranial nerves. Down here, here's your optic chiasm. Learn about that in lab. Okay, it goes signal from your eyes to your occipital lobe of your brain. Okay, again, there's pairs. So cranial nerve 1 comes from the olfactory receptors in your nose. Cranial nerve 2 comes from the retina of your eyes. 3 is oculomotor, goes to the eye nerves. 4 goes to the eye muscles as well. 5 goes to your mouth and jaw muscles. 6 to the eye muscles. So your 7 from the taste buds and to the facial muscles and glands. 8 inner ear. 9 from the pharynx into the pharyngeal muscles. 10 2 and from the internal organs, 11 to the neck and back muscles, and 12 to the tongue muscles. Okay, so most have to do with the head or the neck of the face. Okay, it shows you kind of what a nerve looks like, bundle of nerve fibers. So remember when we learned about the muscle? So this is on the document that's, I think it says, let's see, I'll show you if you're trying to find it. It says chapter 870 full notes. Okay. So that's the one that you should be trying to, if you're trying to find it in Canvas, that's what it is. All right. So just like the muscle tissue had bundles of fibers, your nerves also have bundles. Okay. Also have arteries and veins in them. Then you have individual nerve fibers inside the bundles. And these are myelinated. You can see that there. Also have blood supply. So the nerves that supply your head, your neck, and your face, we call those cranial nerves. The nerves that supply the rest of your body, we call those spinal nerves, and they make up your peripheral nervous system. Okay. All right, now on your spinal nerves, got 31 pairs of those, and they are designated according to their location in relationship to the vertebrae. These are mixed nerves, which means they got sensory and motor fibers. The sensory fibers will enter at the posterior root, also known as the dorsal root. The motor fibers will exit at the anterior root, also known as the ventral root. The cell body in a sensory neuron is going to be actually inside the posterior root ganglion. Okay, so that's why it has a bulge to it. Okay, because there's cell body there. Okay, let's look at spinal nerves. So you have cranial nerves here. Remember these sections of the vertebrae, names match. Thoracic nerves, lumbar nerves, sacral nerves. And you have a pair of coccygeal nerves. All right, so nerves you may have heard of, like musculocutaneous nerve, phrenic nerve, radial nerve, median nerve, ulnar nerve, or intercostal nerves, it's got the ribs. Okay, so all right, so these are nerves in the upper body. All right, you also have the femoral nerve down towards the lumbar area, sciatic nerve, okay, which kind of has some roots in lumbar and sacral. Okay, so before we start this part, I want you to kind of talk with your partner about the nature or what the, basically describe the peripheral nervous system and describe cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Okay, so I want you to do those three things with your partner. You can do this at home as well to review. All right, somatic motor system, as well as reflexes. So if it's somatic motor, we're typically talking about voluntary, okay? So these are things that originate, actions that originate in what we call the motor cortex, okay, of the brain. So if they're voluntary, you usually are going to have to think to do it, so it's going to involve your brain. Okay, so this is kind of linking back to what we talked about last week, okay, with motor cortex and parts of the brain that are responsible for moving different parts of your body. Remember the funky little pictures with the brain and the different parts of the body and all that. So, so your reflexes are autonomic and they're involuntary, okay? And so your cranial reflexes will involve the brain because they're at that, they're already basically in that general area. But your spinal reflexes just involve the spinal cord. Okay. All right, so here's an example of a reflex arc. So you have this pin touching the skin, a sensory receptor in your skin. Remember, this is the integumentary system, right? Remember, you had sensory receptors in your integumentary system. Okay, it's going to send a signal. Because remember, you had nerves in your dermis. You might remember that. So those nerves are going to send a signal from those essentially dendrites, right? Because they're sending information to that cell body in the posterior or dorsal root ganglion. And that sensory information then is going to be transferred into the spinal cord. Okay. In this model, the dendrites of the sensory nerve are going to send information to an interneuron. And the interneuron is just a fancy term for a neuron that's in between a sensory neuron and a motor neuron. So in lab, I think we showed you a simpler reflex arc that just was sensory neuron touching the motor neuron. In this case, you have some more advanced processing that has to happen, so you have an interneuron in the middle. Okay. Now, on the ventral or anterior side, you have the anterior root. Okay, this is the cell body for the motor neuron. So it's going to send the motor signal through its axon to some effector. Could be muscle, could be your skin, make your hair, it could be sending a signal to the erector pili muscles, making your hair stand up. Could be a signal to a gland to secrete hormones. In this case, it's a muscle. Okay, and we're talking about, specifically in this section, we're talking about motor responses. So it's sending a signal, in this case, to the biceps brachii muscle to contract. Okay? But what's special about a reflex is that anywhere in this did you see any arrows pointing toward the brain? No, okay, it just stays in the spinal cord. So it's very fast.
What do you mean you said it's very fast?
Well, if you think about it, if I've got to send a signal up through your spinal cord to your brain, let your brain process it, think about what it's going to do, make a decision about what information it's going to send, who it's going to send it to, send it back down. That's all. I mean, when we say fast, I mean, it's all fast, but I mean,
you probably wouldn't feel that pin stick as fast if it had to go to the brain.
You wouldn't have a reaction as fast.
Oh, okay.
Which is bad because you don't, like, right, every second that you leave your finger, like if you're touching a hot stove, is further damage. And we're talking on a scale. And so we're talking milliseconds. So when we say slow, fast, I mean, it's all relatively fast, but when you're in a dangerous situation, milliseconds they matter. So relatively speaking, reflexes are much faster than a signal that goes to your brain. So there's two divisions of your autonomic nervous system. Okay, and autonomic, automatic, right? Remember that? Just kind of keep that in your brain. They're automatic and involuntary. And these will innervate the internal organs in your body, right? So like heart, lungs, stomach, intestines, okay? You may not think of those as having nerves connected to them, but they do. So they're going to use two motor neurons and one ganglion for each nerve impulse, okay? So it's a little more sophisticated, okay? Two motor neurons and one ganglion. So why do these matter? Why do visceral reflexes matter? Well, visceral reflexes, again, because they're involuntary, are critical for homeostasis. You wouldn't want homeostasis to be under the control of voluntary things, because if you were to have to think about everything that you had to do to maintain homeostasis in your body, you never get to do anything. I mean, if you think, okay, I've got to maintain my body temperature, I've got to maintain my water balance, I got to maintain my sodium balance. If you had to think to do that, you wouldn't have time to think about anything else. So you want those to be autonomic, okay? All right, so in a sense, those of us who have natural imbalances in those things, they do have to think about, you know, making sure they eat right or do other things to make sure they maintain their balance. But those of us who have those things, they can tell you how much impact that has on their life, right? That most of us who don't have to do that take for granted. All right, so sympathetic nervous system in your autonomic nervous system. This is your fight or flight response. You've ever heard the term fight or flight before, okay? All right, so fight or flight. You have pre-ganglionic. Anytime you see pre, that means before, right? So like a prerequisite is a class you got to take before the class, right? So pre-ganglionic fiber before you reach the ganglion will arise from that thoracic lumbar portion of your spinal cord. So lower portion or inferior portion of your spinal cord. And the pre-ganglionic fibers are short. The post-ganglionic fibers are actually long. So what does the sympathetic nervous system do? It can speed up your heartbeat or accelerate it. It can dilate your bronchi. Okay, so why do you think that would be good in a sympathetic response? So if you're in a fight or you got to run or you got to fight, something bad's going to happen. What does increasing your heartbeat do for you? It increases your blood flow. Okay, what is dilating your bronchi? Dilating means expand. It makes it easier to breathe, but it makes it easier for gas exchange. So you can get more oxygen out of the air that you breathe. Okay, you become more efficient. So every time you inhale, more oxygen goes into your bloodstream. Okay, so because you're going to need it to fight, you're going to need it to run away. Okay, inhibits the digestive tract. Okay, so it's in a sense you're inhibiting the things that are your everyday maintenance so you can conserve that oxygen for the thing that you have to do at that present moment. Okay, so and all of this again comes down to some basic chemistry, which is why we teach you that stuff, some basic cell properties. Remember neurotransmitters? All right, those chemicals that get released in that synaptic cleft. So the neurotransmitter that's released by the postsynaptic ganglion is primarily norepinephrine. Okay, so norepinephrine is very involved in a sympathetic response. Okay, now the parasympathetic nervous system is known as rest and digest. So you have a few cranial nerves involved. You got some preganglionic fibers. They arise from the sacral portion of your spinal cord. Okay, so we call it cranial sacral portion of your autonomic nervous system. So in this case, the preganglionic fiber is long and the postganglionic fiber is short. So this is actually going to, in its parasympathetic response, it's going to promote digestion. Okay, it's going to slow down your heart. And it's going to decrease the strength of your heartbeat contractions. So this is the opposite. Okay. So when things are back to normal, you do need to digest your food. When things are back to normal, you can slow your heart rate down. Things are back to normal, your heart doesn't have to beat as hard. So the acetylcholine is that neurotransmitter that's involved in that parasympathetic response. Anybody remember acetylcholine? Okay, you've heard that one before. Okay, so again, this is building on what you already know. Okay, so don't feel like, man, I don't know anything. Trust me, you know something. Okay, so you're going to see terms every chapter. You're like, I remember that term from a chapter before. Okay, and that means you're linking information, which is a good thing. All right, so here's a graphic representation of your sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. All right. So as we said before, sympathetic division involves cranial nerves, thoracic nerves, and lumbar nerves. All right, so what does it do? Speeds up your heart rate. Remember, it's inhibiting digestion, so it inhibits salivation, you get dry mouth. Dilates your pupils so you can really see what's going on around you. Inhibits tears, okay? Dilates your air passages, your bronchi, so you can get more oxygen. Okay, stimulates your liver to release glucose. Okay, so your body can get that sugar it needs really quickly. All right. Stimulates adrenal secretions, so you get hormones that can help you. Inhibits activity of your kidneys, so you're not going to be filtering out waste, so you can use that energy for other things. Increases the activity in your intestines. Inhibits urination. All right, causes contractions in the male reproductive system. All right, so for the parasympathetic division, so it's going to do essentially the opposite everywhere. And again, involves cranial nerves and sacral nerves. So it stimulates tears, will constrict the pupils, stimulate salivation, constrict the bronchioles. So it's getting you back to resting state. It stimulates your gallbladder to release bile. Okay, it's promoting digestion, increases activity of your stomach and your pancreas. And we haven't covered the digestive system, so you may not know about the gallbladder and bile, but we'll get into that in a later chapter. All right, so it's increasing activity in your intestines, stimulating urination, okay, and promoting erection in the genitals. All right. So how does aging affect your nervous system? So actually, as you get older, particularly as an adult, as an adult, as you age, the mass of the brain actually decreases. Learning, reasoning, memory start to decline. Okay, you may know older adults for whom this is an issue, right? Those of us who are older, like, hey, give me a break, I can't remember everything, but there actually are some medical reasons for that. So neurotransmitter production will start to decrease. So the signals that are being, so you're not just getting smaller, but the signals that your nerves are trying to send are not sending as effectively because you have less neurotransmitter. All right, so you get these structural changes, but it's not a guarantee. So it's not like everyone who gets older is going to have memory issues. Not everyone's going to have reasoning issues. Okay, so it's not necessarily automatic. Okay? All right, what about the effects on homeostasis on the central nervous system? So remember, homeostasis helps you detect, interpret, and respond to changes that are going on both inside your body and outside your body. So into your endocrine system, which we're going to cover next, after we cover special senses, okay? So it coordinates and it also regulates how your other body systems work through hormones. So your hypothalamus, as well as your medulla oblongata, help you with vital functions, right? And your sympathetic nervous system, or sympathetic division rather, of your autonomic nervous system, protects you from danger, okay? And your parasympathetic division helps you rest after your danger has passed away. All right. So that is the nervous system. So I would like for you to talk about the parasympathetic and sympathetic divisions at your table and what the effects are. All right, and that is the nervous system. Next chapter, we're going to cover special senses, and then we're going to move on to endocrine system.